There's a dangerous way to waste a Super Bowl window. Acting like depth is a luxury. Acting like rumors never turn into real consequences. Acting like health is just going to show up on schedule. The 49ers are walking into a stretch where every roster decision looks small, right up until it costs you an entire season. Today we've got a possible cut, a possible trade, pass rush being treated like an obsession, and a rookie fighting for space at the exact spot where this team got hit hard. The faithful do not want pretty excuses in January. They want aggression, roster protection, and real competitive pride. Hit that like button and subscribe because Santa Clara is starting to heat up. We have to attack the first point right away because this one is honestly frustrating. Mac Jones was not just some decorative piece last year. He stepped in when Brock Purdy was out early in the season, took the wheel, won 5 of his 8 starts, and helped keep this team from falling apart while the season was still finding its shape. For a franchise that knows better than almost anybody how one injury can tear up an entire plan, that should mean something serious. But with Purdy healthy and back as QB1, there are rumors that the 49ers are putting Jones on the market. And that is where this stops being only about a backup quarterback. It becomes a snapshot of the team's mindset. Because San Francisco seems to be flirting with a dangerous idea, that the perfect roster exists on paper, with every starter available, everybody healthy, everybody ready for 17 games. Football does not care about spreadsheet fantasy. The annoying part is the pattern. The team already let Brian Robinson Jr. walk in free agency, still has questions on the offensive line, and now possibly thinning out the quarterback room feels like inviting bad luck to knock again. After years where injuries changed entire seasons, decisions like this do not feel bold. They feel like a challenge to the franchise's own recent history. If Jones really does leave, Curtis Rourke becomes the natural path as Purdy's backup. Rourke was a 7th-round pick in 2025 and still has not thrown an NFL pass. That does not mean the kid can't develop, but a contender cannot live on pleasant hope. A contender needs a plan B with a pulse, because one hit, one rough week, one tight stretch, and suddenly the entire team is asking maturity from somebody who has never faced a starting defense on Sunday. Same thing with Jordan James behind Christian McCaffrey. Another young talent, another possibility, another bet without regular season mileage. The problem is not having young players on the roster. The problem is stacking inexperience at positions where the margin for error is tiny, and then acting like the fan base is supposed to just calmly breathe through it. The 49ers are too good to treat depth like leftovers. They have a roster built to fight at the top of the NFC. They have the starting quarterback, the stars, the coach, the structure. That is exactly why any move that thins the bench has to be challenged hard. When the window is open, protecting the team is not caution. It is a competitive responsibility. Then comes the second story, and it completely changes the volume in the room. Because one thing is debating whether the roster is getting too thin. Another thing is looking at the market and seeing a name like Maxx Crosby linked to the 49ers in a possible trade scenario down the road. That does not sound like a patch. That sounds like a declaration of war. San Francisco will start with Nick Bosa and Michael Williams trying to rebuild a pass rush that finished last year with only 20 sacks. For this franchise's standard, that is low. Really low. The 49ers cannot walk into a high-ambition season with a defense that pressures quarterbacks every now and then. This identity has always worked when the opposing quarterback feels the clock speeding up before the snap. When the defensive line becomes a constant threat, everything else breathes easier. The secondary, the linebackers, the play calling, and the control of the game. That is why the Crosby speculation catches fire so fast. Joey Bosa and Jadeveon Clowney show up as veteran free agent names, but Crosby is a different category of impact. Motor, legal violence, snap after snap, the kind of presence that fits big games. Grant Cohn said he believes the Niners are interested, that Crosby would fit the locker room, the culture, next to Nick Bosa and George Kittle. Honestly, that read makes sense from a personality standpoint. Crosby plays with organized rage. San Francisco needs that exact kind of energy if this defense wants to feel feared again, not just respected. The issue is timing. Based on Cohn's projection, the Raiders probably would not rush to move him before the season. They may want to see Crosby on the field, show that the knee is right after the left meniscus issue, rebuild value, and only then listen to the market. That pushes the conversation towards September, maybe closer to the trade deadline, especially if Las Vegas stumbles and San Francisco realizes the pass rush still has not become what it needs to be. The recent numbers explain why the whole league would pay attention. In 2025, Crosby played 935 defensive snaps, posted a 79.7 overall grade from PFF, generated 53 pressures, 10 sacks, 31 hurries, 12 quarterback hits, 1 forced fumble, and added 46 solo tackles against the run. That is not a famous name living off reputation. That is real production. Then comes the uncomfortable part, the price. Cohn raised the possibility of young 49ers gaining value and becoming trade pieces, naming Michael Williams, Runardo Green, and Ricky Pearsall. That is where I slow down a little. Wanting Crosby is easy. Pulling young pieces out of a roster that already needs depth is a completely different conversation. The right kind of aggression is not throwing talent out the window. It is measuring whether Crosby transforms the defense enough to justify the cost. If the Raiders sink and Crosby is healthy, John Lynch needs to be on the phone. But he needs to be cold about it too. This is the type of move that can push a defense from good to frightening. If it is miscalculated though, it fixes one hole by opening two. And after everything the 49ers have already lived through, they cannot confuse ambition with impulse. Hold on to this one because the Brandon Aiyuk story has already moved past regular roster drama. According to Adam Schefter, the expectation he laid out is that the 49ers hold Aiyuk until the team returns for training camp, around July 25th, and then eventually release the receiver. Straight cut. Door open for him to become a free agent. And naturally, Washington makes noise as a landing spot, because Jaden Daniels is there, a close friend, former Arizona State teammate, a quarterback with every emotional and football reason to want Aiyuk nearby. But the aggressive question is different. Why wait? If San Francisco truly believes Aiyuk has become such a big issue that nobody will want to deal with him, the logical move would be to cut him now and end the saga. Holding him for another month suggests a more calculated read. The team may be trying to delay his adjustment in Washington, especially with a game against the Commanders in Week 6. That is not sentiment. That is cold chess. And I do not blame the 49ers for thinking that way. Aiyuk poked, made noise, and made it clear on social media that Washington seems to be where he wants to be. Fine. Players have wants, frustration, pride. But the franchise also has a responsibility to protect competitive advantage. If he is leaving, San Francisco does not need to roll out the red carpet, pour the coffee, and hand him extra time to learn the playbook of an opponent sitting on the schedule. That does not erase the risk. If Aiyuk gets to the Commanders healthy, produces, becomes a trusted weapon for Daniels, and behaves well in the locker room, the heat in Santa Clara will be brutal. Because then the story changes from problem player to top talent got away and found appreciation somewhere else. And when a receiver at that level performs away from you, nobody wants to hear polished explanations about environment, timing, or Instagram posts. On the other side, if the knee is still limited, if the burst does not come back the same, if the frustration shows up when the ball does not, the 49ers will look harsh, yes, but right. That is the most uncomfortable part. This saga can still become evidence against either side. So I want to hear from the faithful. If Aiyuk ends up in Washington and faces the 49ers in Week 6, would you call that a front office mistake, a smart maneuver, or an unavoidable war? Because that answer says a lot about how every fan views loyalty, business, and championship hunger. To close the news, look at how football sometimes answers one concern from another direction. After talking so much about depth, risk, and how this roster cannot live only off its starters, here comes Jaden Dugger, 5th round, young linebacker. A name a lot of people may still be treating like a roster footnote. But inside Santa Clara, he started making noise at exactly the right time. According to Matt Barrows of The Athletic, Dugger turned heads during spring practices while Luke Gifford was out with a concussion. That opened snaps at strong side linebacker, and the coaches still see a raw player with plenty to learn. Normal. A 5th-round rookie does not walk in ready to command the 49ers defense. But then comes the part that triggers the positive alert. The traits showed up. He is described as the tallest, longest, and fastest linebacker in the group, and KJ Wright praised how quickly he is picking up the defense. That matters because last season showed, brutally, how much the second level of the defense can change when a central piece goes down. Fred Warner is the kind of player who organizes, covers, attacks, disguises pressure, cleans up mistakes, and lets the coordinator call the game with freedom. When a defense loses that kind of presence, it does not just lose tackles. It loses language, it loses variation, it loses confidence. So no, Dugger does not need to become Warner. Nobody should put that weight on the kid. His path is different. Win special team snaps, hit people in the kicking game, show immediate usefulness, and force the coaching staff to see real value at the bottom of the roster. His college experience helps that conversation because he had 368 special team snaps over 4 seasons, and played in 4 of the 6 phases. For a reserve linebacker trying to survive final cuts, that is not a detail, that is a resume. And there is a competitive detail there. Week 1 against the Rams, a team that can attack with heavy packages and 3 tight ends. If Dugger keeps climbing, he could become that specific athletic body for certain matchups, especially when San Francisco needs size, length, and speed without breaking the structure. The fight is still tough. Teams usually do not carry many off-ball linebackers, and the top of the position already has strong names. But that is exactly why this news has value. Dugger is not getting space because of fame. He is trying to rip space away through contact, opportunity, athletic tools, and fast growth. After a whole script about how the 49ers cannot play games with depth, this is the kind of development that deserves attention. It does not fix everything. It does not erase questions at quarterback, offensive line, or pass rush. But it shows one thing every contender needs to find every year: a cheap, young, hungry player who can become insurance before the emergency arrives. The message today is brutal. The 49ers are not in a comfortable experimentation phase. They are in a pressure phase. If they move Mac Jones, they need conviction. If they dream about Maxx Crosby, they need to calculate the price without fear. If Aiyuk really leaves, it needs to be strategy, not a poorly managed saga. And if Jaden Dugger is growing, develop that kid like depth can save a season. The faithful understand talent, but they also understand waste. Comment which of these 4 stories could change San Francisco's direction the most. Hit the like button, subscribe to 49ers Express, and stay locked in.